Chapter 3 of the life of Krishna. Chapter 3 is the divine infant. So there's a lot of stories about Krishna as a child, sort of getting into trouble. He's very, very mischievous. So, Chapter 3. Hail to the divine child who has taken on a form for sport. Seeing his playful exploits, even the minds of the serious will be swayed. May that playful form lead me to the end of the game of life. The scene now shifts to Gokula, where for the next 12 years, Krishna beguiled his foster parents and the rest of the gopis and the gopilas. Gopis are milkmaids. Think milkmaids, and the gopilas are like the cow herders or cowboys. So we have the milkmaids and the cowboys. So for the next 12 years, Krishna beguiled his foster parents, the rest of the milkmaids, and the cowboys in 1,000 ways. Those fortunate ones were able to dandle the infinite on their knee, to suckle the nourisher of the universe, to bind that boundless and formless one, and to hold him in the circle of their loving arms. There is no chapter in the Lord's life so touching as this. It explores the heights and depths of all various forms of love. It explores the heights and depth of all various forms of love that a simple and unsophisticated heart is capable of giving. Or the parents' love for their son, or a boy's love, has some Sanskrit here, Vatsala Bhava, the parents' love for the son, Sakya Bhava, or the boy's love for his friend, or Madhurya Bhava, the girl's love for her sweetheart. He was everything to them: son, friend, lover, savior, and God. The moment his father left him beside the sleeping Yashoda, the baby opened his rosebud mouth and started yelling as if to say, "What? Are you all sleeping when I enter your house? So also will I enter your hearts like a thief in the night. But once I'm within, I'll leave you in no doubt as to my presence." The whole household, which had been held in a magic slumber till then, now sprang to life. Great was their joy when they found the child they remembered to have been a girl was really a boy, for that was the only explanation that occurred to them. A boy, the news spread like wildfire. A beautiful bonny boy. Wow, Bonnie. A beautiful bonny boy has been born to our chief. The happy father rushed to the room and feasted his eyes on the delightful scrap of divinity that shone in his room. Loud and long were his praises to God. He made presentations of clothes, ornaments, cows, and money to all for the well-being of his son. He had never expected to become a father all his life, for his wife Yashoda was already 45 years of age. They had almost given up the hope of ever having a child, and now to be blessed with a son, and a son of such a delightful aspect. His joy knew no bounds. When morning came, the entire community of gopis and gopilas, milkmaids and cowboys, came to see the child with their little offerings of butter and milk and curd, which were all they had to give. But these they offered in the pure crystal bowl of their hearts, and so it was more acceptable to the Lord than the costliest of presents. All those who saw him loved him as if he were their own, and this was no wonder, for God belongs to all equally. For God belongs to all equally. He was a source of unlimited bliss to the gopis, who used to finish their housework as fast as possible and crowd into Yashoda's house to pet him and fondle him and exclaim over his cute ways. They forgot their homes, their husbands, and even their own children, and reveled in the bliss emanating from this divine child. From that day onward, Raja, the cowherd settlement of Gokula, being the residence of Hari, also became the playground of Sri Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity and auspiciousness. I'm sorry, did I say Lakshmi? Lakshmi. Sri Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity and auspiciousness. Since Kamsa was the king of the land, all the chiefs had to pay an annual tribute to him. So Nanda left for Mathura to pay the taxes, with many anxious warnings to Yashoda never to leave the child alone. Hearing of Nanda's arrival, Vasudeva went to meet him, for he was very anxious to have news of his son, as well as his son by his wife Rohini, who was also living with Nanda. "O brother," he said, "I hear I have to congratulate you. It is indeed fortunate that you, who were childless until now, have a baby at this advanced age. Lucky man to be a father of such a son. And what about my son, who is now living with his mother at your house? How is he?" Poor Yasudeva, though not an envious man by nature, was filled with envy at the thought that Nanda would be enjoying what should have been his by right, and his wife Yashoda would be having the extreme pleasure of nursing the Lord. His own wife could nurse only her tears, while her breast dried up, unwanted and unfulfilled. Bitter indeed was this thought. At least he had been happy that the child was safe. But now, having heard of Kamsa's edict to massacre all children, he was filled with dread and warned Nanda. Nanda said, "Alas, I have heard of all the calamities that you have had to bear, O brother. All things are in the hands of God. Those who know this will not grieve." Vasudeva, though he longed to hear more about his sons, did not like to keep him talking any longer, for he feared for their safety. He urged Nanda, "I see ill omens, and I fear for the safety of your child. Return to Gokula immediately. Do not waste time in the city, and never leave the child alone or show him to strangers." Nanda was terrified when he heard this, and went directly Nanda was terrified when he heard this and went directly to Gokula in his ox-drawn cart. In the meantime, a demon is called Putana, an expert at infanticide, had begun to move about in towns, villages, and settlements at Kamsa's behest to slaughter all infants, regardless of their sex or age. She could travel anywhere in any form. One day, she came to Gokula, taking the form of an attractive young woman. She had perfected an ingenious method for killing infants. Posing as a wet nurse, she smeared her breast with poison and nursed the babies. The result was conclusive. When she reached Gokula, she heard of the birth of a baby boy in the house of Nanda and went there immediately. Putana looked like a veritable goddess when she glided into the room where the child lay sleeping. She picked him up without realizing that it would be her last act. Seeing her air of authority, both Rohini and Yashoda felt embarrassed to ask her who she was and to remonstrate her for taking up the baby, even though she was a stranger. Without hesitating, Putana placed the sleeping infant in her lap and proceeded to nurse him. It is said that the Lord deliberately feigned sleep, for he knew that if she looked into his wondrous eyes, even she, hardened sinner though she was, would repent and go away without attempting to kill him, and then his mission would be incomplete. Even so, as she gazed at his sleeping face, an overwhelming rush of maternal love flowed from her, and her breasts, which were incapable of yielding milk, gushed forth. She forgot the poison she had smeared on them, giving the child suck and crooning to him the while. But her lullaby soon changed into a swan song, for the little fellow, toothless though he was, held her breast like in a vice-like grip and sucked with gusto. He seemed to drain her of her vital energy. In mortal agony, she rushed out of the house and assumed her demonic form. At last, with a roar of pain, she fell like a mountain in the middle of the courtyard, destroying the cowshed and the hayrack. Her fall caused tremors in the earth and made the gopis and the gopilas tremble with fear. This was the scene that greeted the eyes of the terrified father when he returned from Mathura. "Where's the baby? Where's the baby?" was the frightened clamor from all sides. Suddenly they saw the infant fearlessly kicking its limbs in delight, laying on top of the monstrous form of the demoness. The Gopulas hesitated in fear, but the gopis rushed forward, for he was more important to them than their own lives, and took him up in their arms. They were amazed at how he could still be alive. They did not dream that he could be responsible for the monster's death. God must have saved him in some miraculous way, was the general verdict. They bathed him and performed sacred rites for his safety, such as waving cows' tails over his body, smearing him with dust from the hooves of the cows, and applying dried cow dung under the 12 vital parts of his body while uttering the sacred names of Vishnu. The child submitted to all these ministrations with secret amusement and kicked and crooned with delight. Since they could not cremate this huge body in the compound, they had to hack it into bits and carry it far away to be burnt. They had expected a terrible stench to arise from the burning carcass, but instead, the sweet smell of sandalwood filled the air. This was because Putana had suckled the divine child and thus became free from every form of sin. Those sacred feet of his, which devotees cherish in their hearts, and which are the refuge of even the sages, were placed on her lap while he sucked at her breast, so that even though she was a demoness, she got the reward due to the Mother of God. If a killer of infants and a vampire like Putana attained mukti, which is liberation, because she had fed him, then think of the glorious destiny of those who offered him all that was nearest and dearest to them, as his parents the gopis did. What then can be said of the good fortune of the gopis and even the cows who fed him with the greatest of love? Never was a mortal woman happier than Yashoda, wife of the Queen of Nanda. Wife and Queen of Nanda, foster mother of the Lord. Day after day, she held him in her lap and fed him and cradled him to sleep, as if he were an ordinary baby, for not even she suspected the extent of his strength. Putana was the forerunner of many demons sent by Kamsa to kill the baby. They were in various forms and guises. Needless to say, none returned alive, though at first none of the Gopulas realized the extent of the remarkable powers possessed by the infant. Slowly they began to have some inkling of the vast storehouse of power that lay between those tiny arms. And I guess this book isn't going to go, because there's usually a lot of demons that there's like a whole parade of demons who come in various forms, and Krishna beats them while still acting like a baby. And so I guess we're just not going to go into all those, which is fine. 90 days after his birth, when the star Rohini came round for the third time, they held the ceremony commemorating his first time to be taken outside of the house. There was a large gathering, and Yashoda bathed the baby amid the chanting of mantras. Having received the blessings of the Brahmins, she placed the drowsy infant under a cart to sleep. She kept a ring of little boys to watch over him, and she went inside to attend her guest. At this moment, the demon Shakata entered the cart, thinking that it would be easy to bring it down upon the infant and kill him as if an accident. But he calculated without knowing the powers of his opponent. At the very instant the cart started to fall, the infant gave a kick with his tiny foot, and lo, the cart and all its contents were thrown to the other side of the yard, and Shakata was killed. Of his body, however, there was no sign, for it is said that since the Lord's feet had kicked him, even his physical form had attained liberation. Hearing the terrible cracking sound, everyone rushed forward. I gotta say, it's got to be good news for regular people that the demons going to kill Krishna attain liberation, through contact. It just is. I mean, demons are getting saved, right? So, all right. What happened? What happened? They asked the children who had been looking after the baby. The cart fell down, and this little boy kicked it and broke it with his feet, they said proudly. The people gazed in astonishment at the baby who was kicking his feet and gurgling happily as if to confirm the truth of what the children said. These children are capable of making up anything, the adults said in disbelief. Yashoda snatched up her baby and caressed his rose-petaled feet. Did you get hurt, my darling? She crooned. Did the cart hurt you? God certainly looks after your child, Yashoda, the other gopis exclaimed. Not having an inkling of the superhuman might of their child, the frightened parents arranged for many rites to be done for him to protect him from evil forces. After this incident, Yashoda was frightened to leave him alone, even for a minute. One evening she was sitting with him in her lap, crooning to him and repeating prayers when she felt unequal to the task of bearing his weight, for he appeared to grow heavier and heavier. What could be the matter? What could the matter be? She felt that someone had cast an evil eye on him. So she placed him on a mat and went to the kitchen to get some condiments that, when waved above the infant, were supposed to ward off the effects of the evil eye. Hardly had she disappeared than the child made himself lighter than usual, for he had known of the approach of the demon Trinavarta, who was coming in the form of a whirlwind that engulfed the whole of Gokula in such a cloud of dust that the entire settlement was plunged into darkness. While the tornado was raging, Yashoda was unable to see her child anywhere, and she collapsed in fear and started to cry. Trinavarta rose up into the air with the baby, but soon he was unable to bear the infant's massive weight and found his speed dwindling, until at last he fell down with a roar onto a huge rock and dashed himself to smithereens. The Gopulas ran to the spot where the demon had crashed and found the baby glowing like a sapphire atop the rock. Taking up the blessed child, they presented him to his mother. They were filled with wonder at the apparent miraculous escape. Poor Yashoda. Until a child starts to crawl, it can be expected to remain in the place where it had been put. Having a baby at such a late age, Yashoda was already an over-anxious mother, and to add to this, it appeared that this child was accident-prone. She could never leave him alone for even a minute to be sure of feeding him in the same... She could never leave him alone for even a minute and be sure of finding him in the same place on her return. Though he appeared to be unscathed by these experiences, she had no way of knowing that this was due to his own powers and not to some miracle. She attributed it to luck or providence. How could she imagine that within him lay the ability to protect the entire cosmos? It may have been to set her mind at rest that one day he showed her a miracle. As usual, she was sitting in her favorite spot on the veranda that overlooked two huge trees in the garden and worrying about all the dangers that might possibly befall him. With infinite tenderness, she contemplated the cherubic face in her arms. At that moment, the Lord opened his rosebud mouth as if to yawn, and lo, the mother saw the entire universe in his little mouth. She stared fascinated. There was no doubt. The sky, the earth, the heavens, the stars, the planets, the sun, the moon, fire, air, oceans, rivers, and continents were all inside the baby's mouth. For a split second, she forgot herself and the baby and felt as if she were poised on the brink of endless worlds, the spectator of a mighty cosmic drama. At last she could bear it no longer, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the illusion, if it could be called that, had vanished, and she was just a mother holding her baby in her arms. Rohini, Rohini, she called. Come here and tell me what you see in the child's mouth. I thought I saw something strange and wondrous. Rohini came running, and with great difficulty she managed to pry open his little mouth and shove her finger inside, only to get a sharp nip for her pains. I know what's in this child's mouth, she told Yashoda. Yashoda, he's teething. That's what you saw. Yashoda shook her head doubtfully. The miracle she had just witnessed was already fading from her mind, but a lingering feeling of awe remained, and with it a certain degree of comfort. The child was not as helpless as he looked, she thought to herself. There was no more need for her to worry so much over his welfare. He was capable of looking after himself. This thought comforted her, and this was just what the Lord wanted. At that time, the great sage Gargacharya, at that time, the great sage Gargacharya, or Gargamuni, hey, that's much easier. Gargamuni, the priest of the Yadava clan, went to Vraja at the instigation of Vasudeva, who sent him there to perform the naming ceremony of his sons. Gargacharya was noted for his skills in astrology, and Nanda welcomed him and requested him to perform the purification rites for his child as well as Rohini's. It's going to keep making me say this name. Gargacharya said, I am well known as the priest of the Yadavas, and if I perform the purificatory rites for these children, and Kamsa comes to hear of it, take it as an indication that the child's foe is here, and take steps to kill him. I'm going to read that sentence again because I totally butchered it and I have no idea what it said. So Gargacharya said, I am well known as the priest of the Yadavas, and if I perform this perform the rites of purification for these children, and Kamsa comes to hear of it, take it as an indication that the child's foe is here, and take steps to kill him. The foe, not the child. So Nanda begged him to perform the ceremony in some solitary place without the knowledge of even the other Gopalas. Since he knew everything and had gone there with the express purpose of naming the child, he agreed with alacrity. Thus, without the knowledge of anyone else, the ceremony was conducted in an empty cow barn, and only Nanda, Yashoda, and Rohini, with only Nanda, Yashoda, and Rohini as witnesses. First, Gargacharya took Rohini's child in his lap, since he was the elder, and named him Balarama, because of his great strength, as well as his ability to delight everyone. Next, he lifted Yashoda's child and placed him tenderly on his lap. The mischievous little thing gave him a sharp look as if to say, you better give me a good name. You better give me a good name that has never been heard before, and yet one that befits me and will be remembered by all to come, or else. At this moment, the old man felt the baby's hands give a sharp tug on his long gray beard, which dangled right down to the baby's stomach and was tickling him. Gargacharya smiled and looked at those wondrous eyes, and his heart left his keeping forever. Krishna, that was the name for him. Krishna, the one who steals the hearts of men, so that one who has once come into contact with him belongs to him forever. Krishna also means dark in color, for the baby was the color of the rain clouds during the monsoons. Gargacharya then outlined the child's horoscope and told Nanda that since he had been the son of Vasudeva in a previous birth, he would also be known as Vasudeva. Numerous are the names with even Numerous are the names with which this child will come to be known because of his qualities and achievements. Even I cannot know them all. Mark, O Nanda, this child is equal to Lord Narayana, who is Vishnu. He is equal to Lord Narayana, Vishnu himself, in respect of fame, prowess, and excellence. Look after him with all attention. All those who harm him will be harming themselves, and those who love him will be ever protected. Krishna gurgled with delight. Here at last was one who realized his greatness, and here was the license to perpetuate whatever mischief he wished to do. He decided to lead the inhabitants of Gokula in such a dance that they would never forget him for the rest of their lives. We pray and worship the Supreme Lord Vishnu for the welfare of all. May all miseries and shortcomings leave us forever, so that we may always be able to sing of his glories. May medicinal herbs grow in potency, so that diseases may be cured effectively. May the gods rain peace on us. May both bipeds and quadrupeds be happy. Peace, peace, peace. From the Rig Veda. Hari Om Tat Sat. And Hari Om Tat Sat to you.